everyone and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. Now continuing on from yesterday's wildcard video where we had a little look at goalkeepers and defenders, today we are going to be moving into midfield and having a little look at who, if I had my wildcard chip and if it was active right now, I would be picking in that midfield category. Now this one is a little bit more difficult than picking the defenders. I think the defenders kind of pick themselves. Yes, you've got some choices to make between the Chelsea defenders. Yes, you've got some choices to make between the Manchester City defenders. But fundamentally, there is a bit of a template forming there in terms of having one from Chelsea, having one from Manchester City, having Trent and having Livramento. And then, of course, that fifth one is a little bit more up for debate. Now, just to recap on who I had yesterday then. This is the players that I was talking about. So I said at the beginning of yesterday's video that I like to have a backbone of my team. So those three down the side there with Trent Alexander-Arnold, Salah and Lukaku, they are the ones that are the backbone of my team. They are the ones that I put in first because one, they are the most expensive and therefore they are the most difficult to budget for. But two, they are my non-negotiables. These are the players that have to be there regardless of what the rest of that team looks like. So for me, they go in straight away. And then I try and fill in the other positions. Now, when I'm doing this not for a video purpose, I kind of then go, well, my other defenders that I really want, in they fit. So in this case, it would have been Rudiger, Cancelo and Livramento. And probably that Ben White slot would have stayed free just to give me some tinkering room as I get further up my team. But for the purpose of building this, I've built the team so I know that they fit in terms of the price point. But it is worth bearing in mind that I am dealing with my team value right now. And so actually that is going to be different for all FPL managers. So for me right now, my team value is at about 101.9. So I do have quite a lot of space in there to tinker around with. So having a look at my team then, as we've got them currently made up if I was wildcarding, we've got Raya and Foster in goal. Basically, as I said yesterday, I think the fixtures are really nice for Raya and Foster's there in case Ranieri keeps him in goal. Then Trent Alexander-Arnold, Rudiger, Livramento, Cancelo and White as my back five. Moving into the midfield then, of course, we see one of my non-negotiables and that is Mohamed Salah. Now, much like when I was picking my defenders and my goalkeepers, I like to go through the stats on Fantasy Football Scout to have a little look at the underlying data that we're seeing, because sometimes the midfielders that we are watching week upon week or that are popular options don't always have the underlying data to back them up. And there are some that are the complete reverse. When you watch them, they don't necessarily perform in the way that you're expecting them to, but the underlying data looks nice. So I had a little look first of all at XGI. Now, of course, expected goals, expected assists, expected goal involvement is really important for us as FPL managers. This is the amount of goals we should be expecting, the amount of assists or goal involvement we should be expecting from our midfielders. And there you are, right at the top, we have Mo Salah, explaining once more why he is one of my non-negotiables. So you can see there that he has an XGI of 6.46, which is significantly greater than teammate Mane and teammate Jota, who fall into second and third. But there are some other interesting figures in that kind of category. If you look down there, in fifth place, you've got Brentford's Mbumo, looks like a nice option. You've got Gallagher there in sixth place. Also, Wilf Zaha up there in seventh. That's interesting because he is a player that isn't getting a lot of FPL attention. In fact, has had some price drops. It's at 6.9 now. Would be a massive differential if you went there. You've got other players in there who we are keeping close eye on and that are always part of the FPL conversation. The likes of Rafinha, and I'd put Greenwood in that category too now. Townsend's becoming increasingly popular as people look at that Everton midfield and try to work out who you go for. And then, of course, I've cut it down there to Trincao and Mount included as well. So that's one of the stats I look at. I go to the Fantasy Football Scout members area and have a little look at the expected stats because that's really useful. Then I have a little look at big chances. Now, big chances is one of those that it's not the end of the world if they don't have a lot of big chances, because there are some quality players who score when they are absolutely as far from a big chance as you can get. but getting a lot of big chances suggests that the team are creating enough good opportunities that there should be some good FPL points to be had. Now we see Mo Salah up there again, top of the league for that with 9, and then we've got some other interesting figures in there too. Again, Mane and Jota sitting up there top, but then we've got Sarr and Bumo, Gallagher, Trincao, we've got Son in there. There's a lot of good value players. Rafinha and Benrahma at the bottom there. A lot of good value players in that top list. And then when you compare that, of course, to attempts on goal, we can see that Salah's having a lot of those as well. So we've got a lot of great underlying stats there going into picking our midfielders. So if we have a little look at the 5 that I would go for then, based upon the underlying stats, based also on the eye test, I've watched a lot of football over the last few weeks. Obviously in the UK now we can't watch every game, but I have pretty much watched every game that's been televised, and I have been at 5 games already this season, so there's been a lot of football to watch. And I think when you watch a lot of football, it does give you a little bit more kind of padding to put on this data, of course, because it has a little bit more understanding then to kind of say, yes, the underlying stats are agreeing with what I am witnessing. So these are the 5 then that I would go for on Wildcard right now. Of course, Mo Salah is 100% in there. Some managers trying to go without Mo Salah a few game weeks ago when they wanted to have both Ronaldo and Lukaku in their fantasy teams. For me, that's just something that I am not prepared to negotiate on. I think he is a total non-negotiable. He is the highest scoring player in the game currently on 70 points, 21 more than Antonio, who's in second place. He has returned in every single game this season bar 1. He is top of the overall ICT index across the whole game, and you all know, if you've been watching us for a long time, how much I love the ICT index. Remember, ICT stands for influence, creativity and threat. So Salah is top for those categories across the entire game when you combine them. He is also first for midfielders in terms of influence and threat. He's getting a lot of shots away. The Liverpool team are playing well. I don't think you want to be going into the next few weeks without Mo Salah, even when the fixtures turn. We saw his performance against Manchester City. Liverpool have a point to prove, it feels to me, this time around. They did not have a great season last season. A lot of players out through injury, but this year I think they mean business, and I suspect that Mo Salah will have a great season. Now, some of you might say, oh, Spurs bias is coming into it. I'm not necessarily sure that I would buy Son and hold him for a long period of time, but that game against Newcastle that Spurs have up next is what's made me put him in there. Spurs have definitely been on a roller coaster so far this season. Decent enough without being brilliant in the opening 3 game weeks, absolutely terrible. But then in the last 2 fixtures in all competitions, we've seen a return of sunshine. 2 assists in game week 7 against Aston Villa. I very much enjoyed watching those. But he was also 4th for XG underachievers in game week 7 too, which suggests that he was unlucky. He really should have got more points than he did. Now it's Newcastle up next, so he could be a great differential pick in terms of, you know, going into the wild card, because look, Newcastle have been particularly poor. I had a little look at some stats on Newcastle. So they haven't looked bad going forward, that is for sure, but they've conceded 16 goals, which is tied worst in the league. They haven't yet kept a clean sheet, much like Watford, that's the worst in the league also. They've conceded 115 shots, only Spurs and Leeds have conceded more than that, and they're top for defensive slip-ups with 80. Targeting that Newcastle defence makes a lot of sense, and therefore going with the Spurs premium of choice right now in Son, I think is a good idea. If you don't have the budget for Son or you want to go a little bit cheaper, then I think Lucas Moura could also be a nice option there. But for me right now, if I'm building a wildcard team, I'm going with Son, because that gives me the opportunity in a couple of weeks' time, if the Spurs fixtures, well, they don't look that great then again until get back game week 13, when they really take a turn for the better. So if you want to have Son just for that Newcastle game, take him out. It leaves you the budget then to bring him back in ahead of game week 13, which could be quite an important move to make. I've also got Rafinha in there. Leeds have had a very mixed start to the season, much like Spurs. They've been hit by injuries to key players. However, Rafinha is the creative backbone of that team. With the fixtures Leeds have coming up, he really looks to be a wise investment. He was 10th for XG underachievers in game week 7, meaning he should have returned points for his managers. He's also 5th for creativity in that ICT index that I was talking about before. That bodes well for future returns, particularly when we see Patrick Bamford back, looking like he's going to be okay to play straight after the international break too, but definitely something to keep an eye on if you are wildcarding and you want to bring him in. But also something to keep an eye on if you're just looking to bring him in on a transfer. Probably just wait until we have really confirmed news. Then the other two in there are my cheaper differential options. And Bumo then has now returned 2 8-point scores in the last 3 game weeks. He was one that I fancied in pre-season, and if you watch the Brentford video back from before the season kicked off, our deep dive video, I was very, very keen on him. Thought he could be a really nice differential option, but I was a bit reluctant because I had Tony in my team. Didn't know that I necessarily wanted to double up. However, the partnership that Mbumo and Tony have impresses me every time I watch them. And we've seen that they can return against even the biggest clubs. So even though they have a difficult fixture next in game week 8 against Chelsea, I think it's worth bringing him in now on Wildcard. After that Chelsea game, the fixtures are basically a sea of green until we get to game week 17. So plenty of opportunities there, and plenty of opportunities for the double up if you fancy the double up on Brentford in terms of those attacking players. And finally then is Conor Gallagher. He's going to cost you 5.7, so not quite as cheap as he once was, but he's been so impressive for Crystal Palace so far this season. Obviously comes out of that Chelsea academy, has 34 FPL points already, but so unlucky not to have got more than that. 8th in the ICT index for threat amongst midfielders, which is really impressive. Managed a double-digit haul already so far this season, and with the exception of Manchester City in game week 10 and the Vieira derby with Arsenal in game week 8, on paper the fixtures look really nice. And I just think Crystal Palace will be really, really up for that derby game in game week 8, particularly with the Vieira factor at play. And we've seen how well they've done against bigger clubs, or supposed bigger clubs, anyway, when they absolutely destroyed Spurs and when they put Liverpool to a real test. And they were really unlucky actually to lose by as many as they did to Liverpool, because they put up a real performance against them. So these are the 5 that I would want to go with if I was going to wildcard right now. They are the players that I think have the best potential. However, they do feel quite template picks, maybe with the exception of Sonny. He's maybe the only one that I think could be a bit of an out there pick. But there are some other players in this midfielder category who I do think could be nice differentials if you're wildcarding. So I've picked out 3 here. One of them is Phil Foden. Now, of course, Phil Foden had a difficult start to the season because he was out through injury. Didn't play anything until 3 game weeks ago when he came on for 17 minutes, but then has had his first 2 starts of the season in game week 6 and game week 7. Across those 2 games, he's had 2 goal attempts. Both of them were big chances, and he's 6th for midfielders for XA in the last 2 game weeks too. He's also the top Man City midfielder for both XG and XGI across the last 2 game weeks, and they face Burnley, Brighton and Crystal Palace next, so going to be plenty of opportunities for goals there for Foden. He seems to be about to come into a bit of a purple patch, and I think he could be a nice differential. I've also put Mason Mount in there. Here's one that is a little bit difficult because I think we were, as FPL managers, looking to triple up on Chelsea. But with Lukaku and wanting to go maybe for the double up in defence, he might end up being a bit overlooked because he has been benched and because he has had some injuries. But he could be a really nice differential given the fixture run that Chelsea have. And finally, I've got Townsend in there, but Townsend could have either been Decore or Gray also. Going with one of those cheap Everton assets. They're on good form, they're regularly scoring goals. Surely that will only improve with the return eventually of Dominic Calvert-Lewin too. So these guys could be good differentials if you want to take your team away from template as part of your wildcard decisions. That's it then. So if I was going to be creating my wildcard team right now, these would be the midfielders that I would choose. Although I might be tempted to switch one of them out for Phil Foden. I do think he could have a nice few game weeks over the next 3 in particular. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Are these the best midfielder options going into the next few weeks if you're wildcarding? If you've enjoyed the video, leave me a like. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And of course, in the comments below, let me know who you think would be your 5 midfielders if you were wildcarding. I will be back tomorrow to look at who the best forwards are if you are wildcarding. Thanks for watching, guys.